Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies through 1 Samuel. We're today in 1 Samuel chapter 3, and as we come into this chapter and look at some lessons from this chapter, we read yesterday about the call of Samuel and the things that transpire within that call. And I want to take just a couple minutes and look at some of the lessons from this particular chapter. And there's a number of things that we could talk about and a number of things we could list, but I want to pull out three of them this morning. And so I hope that you'll go through 1 Samuel chapter 3 with me as we examine these particular things. First of all, when you consider the things that are said and the things that take place when God calls Samuel, you notice Samuel's response. Now, obviously, in the first few times that it happens, he believes that Eli is the one calling him. But it doesn't really matter with Samuel as far as that goes. Samuel's response is always, "Here I am." He is ready to serve. He is ready to do what needs to be done. Now, obviously, this is such that this is what Samuel was trained to do. This is what Samuel was prepared to do from the time he was that little boy being brought in by Hannah, as we read about in chapters 1 and 2. He is older now. He is old enough to have many different responsibilities. Some would argue that he is likely at the age where he is at least at the full apprenticeship age by this point, which would mean he has been in the house of Eli for probably some 15 years or so at this juncture. But Eli is one who is in charge of training him and is responsible for him. And so Samuel comes to him and he says, "Here I am." Now, this call doesn't go out in the middle of the day. It's not such that it's in the course of his normal duties. As a matter of fact, here in chapter 3, it's the middle of the night. It is at the time when there's the danger of, as it were, the lamps going out in the tabernacle, which were supposed to burn day and night, 24 hours a day. And so Samuel is being brought to Eli, or he's being called by God and going to Eli in the middle of the night. And with that, his attitude is still, "Here I am. What do you need?" Obviously, when it comes to us and our service to God, we need to have the attitude of, "Here I am. What does the Lord require of me?" And not the attitude of, "Here we go again," or "Why do I have to do this?" This is the heart of heartfelt service. This is the attitude of someone who wants to do what needs to be done and is actually willing and eager to do it. And that's what we see with Samuel, both in the statements that are made to Eli and in his response to God. Now, he doesn't necessarily like the things that he's told and the things that are commanded, and he's afraid to tell Eli when Eli wants to know. But at the same time, he is willing to do what needs to be done. In the second place, when you come down to verse 13, as God is giving to Samuel his reasons for what is taking place, God uses a very interesting statement that I want to point out. He says in verse 13, "For I have told him that I will judge his house forever, for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile, and he did not restrain them." God is going to give this punishment to Eli. This has been discussed back in chapter 2, but it's going to be discussed here to Samuel in chapter 3. And God is going to tell Samuel just exactly what it is that is going on. And he says it is because Eli did not restrain his sons. The word here that is translated restrain comes from a Hebrew word that carries with it the idea of to weaken or to lessen or to pull away. God here is punishing Eli because he says when he knew what his sons did, he did not weaken them. He did not remove them and pull them away. In other words, he cared more about his sons than he did the responsibilities of the priesthood. He cared more about his children than he did doing what was right in the sight of God. And God says that the things that are going to come upon his house are going to be because of those things. You have to wonder how things might have been different if Eli would have simply removed them from their responsibilities as he had the responsibility to do as high priest. You wonder if Hophni and Phinehas would have either straightened their act out, or at the very least been allowed to continue with their lines and their families because of the discipline that Eli would have performed. But because Eli wasn't willing to do this, Eli is going to lose far more than just a couple of priests to serve before him in offering sacrifices and so on. Instead, he is going to lose his entire family. And remember that at this time Eli is old. And yes, Eli can't do all the work himself anymore, as we see at the beginning of the chapter, because his eyes have grown dim. And yet, he still has a responsibility to the priesthood and a responsibility to God. The third thing I want us to notice is down in verse number 18. After Samuel tells Eli everything that God had told him, and he leaves nothing out, it says at the beginning of verse 18, Eli's response is, to some, a little bit strange. His statement is, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." The ultimate statement that Eli makes is, it's God. He can do whatever he wants. And truly, it is almost a statement of, I can't do anything about it. I can't change it, and I can't fix it. So it will be what it will be. And so Eli has resigned himself to this particular issue. He's not going to argue with God. He's not going to complain. He's not now going to go back and try to do what it was that he should have done. Instead, he simply has the attitude, it's the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. You know, sometimes we get so busy telling God or thinking before God that we know what is best, and that he should really be asking us for advice, and that we know what to do better than he does, and we know what should be expected better than he does. That sometimes we forget it is the Lord, and he will do what seems good to him. It would be wise for us to remember this particular point, that ultimately, in the service of God and in the commands of God, whether we like what he says or not, whether we appreciate what he's doing or not, or the way that he works or not, he is the Lord. And he will do what seems good to him. And he will do what is right, whether it is what we would do or not. These are some of the lessons that I found in 1 Samuel chapter 3. There's obviously many more things that we could discuss, but hopefully these have been beneficial to you. Next time, Lord willing, we will come back and we will begin examining 1 Samuel chapter 4. But until then, I hope you have a great day.